Sample problem 7.3 day 1. What are sine and cosine of this spin? Don't forget, you start in standard position. Negative means down. Be accurate. 45 is about half of 90, so I'm going to stop it right there. I got to create a right triangle. I got two options. I can come back to the y. No, you didn't. Or I go back to the x. So this has to be 45 degrees. Don't think of this as a negative just because of that. That just meant go down. So if that's a 45 and that's 90, this is a 45. Now we have to remember our rules about 45, 45, 90s. X, x, x squared root of 2. So again, the author is going to want to use a unit circle and put a 1 here. I'm going to try to make your lives a little easier and put 1s there, which makes this the square root of 2. Now if I say, I'm good, I made a little mistake. Because remember, there's my x, which is positive. There's my y, which is negative. So I got to remember to put the negative there. Now, what is sine? Well, that's opposite over hypotenuse. This is my reference angle. Why? Because it's sandwiched between the x-axis and my spinner. So I got to focus on this one. So what's the opposite? -1. What's my hypotenuse? Square root of 2. Got to get that out of there. So negative square root of 2 over 2. Now what is cosine? Cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse. And remember, this is my opposite. This is my hypotenuse, making this my adjacent side. So I take the 1, put it over the hypotenuse, and now I'm going to get rid of the square root in the denominator. And there's your first example. I think I have 2 more. Okay, 2 problems for the price of 1. What is cosine? Let's stop right there. So we got to figure out adjacent over hypotenuse for this spin and this spin. Well, first of all, you got to know how to make your spinner spin. So you got to start here. There's an invisible plus there, an invisible plus there. Pi over 3 is 60. 60 times 4 is 240 degrees. Or substitute that for 180. 180 divided by 3 is 60. 60 times 4 is 240. So, how far did I go? 180. I'm begging you guys to be perfectionistic with your drawings, okay? How much farther do I need to go? 60. Don't you dare stop halfway. That's 45. So go about 2/3 of the way. It's going to make your brain very comfortable. So where do I go to create my right triangle? Right back to the x. Now I don't have any dimensions, but this is 60. This is 30. So I'm going to call this a 1, because that's my little shorty. My hypotenuse is double, and this has to be square root of 3. Now I have to stop and pause. I'm in quadrant 3, which means negative, negative. So that's a negative, that's a negative. If you forget those, the problem is shot. Adjacent over hypotenuse, well, this is my adjacent, this is my hypotenuse, this is my opposite. So they only want cosine. So that would be -1 over my hypotenuse. Done. Let's try this one. Pi over 4 is 45. 3 times 45 is 135. So I start my spinner here. Am I still on the board? Yep. 90. How much further? 45, which is exactly halfway, so do your best. So if this is 45, then my reference angle is also 45, which is important. I come back to my x always. There's my 45, 45, 90. All right, I don't know any sides. The book is going to use a unit circle, so they're going to use the value 1. And then divide by the square root of 2 to get here and here. I'm going to do things a little differently. I'm going to call this a 1 and that's a 1. Take care of the sign because it's left and up. And I'm going to multiply this by the square root of 2 to get that. Now, this is my reference angle, so this has to be my opposite. This is my adjacent, that's my hypotenuse. They want cosine, which is ca. Adjacent over hypotenuse. And on this one, we got a little work to do. So it's negative square root of 2 over 2. That would be my answer. One more problem, I think. Last problem. So now they're going to basically challenge you differently, but it's the same information just presented to you a little different. Don't panic, read the problem, trust your instincts and what I've been showing you. So it says, what is sine? So that's what we're trying to find. And then they give you this little golden nugget. If cosine, look at that negative, I put it there on purpose, is 3/5. Now they might have put it like smaller right in front. Okay, we gotta talk. What is cosine? Well, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Now what have I been just beaten like a drum? The hypotenuse is positive. Hypotenuse is positive. So when you have this situation, remember my hypotenuse is down here. Take that negative and put it in the top. That's very, very important, okay? So with that in mind, it's telling us with angle measure, right there, theta is in quadrant 3. Now I've been begging you guys, whoops, that's quadrant 4, quadrant 3. I've been begging you guys to be accurate, be accurate, be accurate. That's for your 30, 60, 90s and your 45, 45, 90s. This is just kind of a randomly drawn thing, so I'm going to do my best, but it might not be perfect. But if I spin it and it ends up in quadrant 3, I could go this way, I could go this way. But I'm going to say, okay, let's go this way. And I'm just going to draw it in here somewhere. Drawing might not be perfect. And now I know that my hypotenuse is 5, which is my spinner. And I go, wait a minute, I know how to draw my triangle. Do I come to the y? Never. Always to your x. Now if my adjacent side is -3, that means if this is my reference angle, see I don't know what it is this time. This is -3. And then if I think for a second about stuff I've been taught this year and geometry, isn't there a 3, 4, 5 family? Or you could go a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but you're just going to get a 4. That's why it's so nice to memorize your families. If it's not a family, you got to use Pythagorean theorem. So I know this is 4. And if I stop right there, I just tripped. Because remember, quadrant 3, negative, negative. So that has to be a negative. Now, are those really negative lengths? No. We're just keeping track of the fact that they're actually coordinate points, -3, -4. So those negatives are directional things, telling you what quadrant you're in. So now, it asks you for sine. Remember, sine is so that's opposite over hypotenuse. So here's my opposite side. Here's my hypotenuse. We know that because this is my adjacent. So they only want the opposite, -4, over the hypotenuse, 5. And there we go. So, a math puzzle, basically. I find these enjoyable. Don't judge me.